Welcome to the Relational Approach Podcast. I'm your host, Deborah Bakhti. I really think you're going to enjoy this conversation that I have had with Krista Smith. Not only does she have a professional understanding of seniors care, because she's been my marketing branding person that has partnered with me over the last 4 years. So she's learned a lot from me and the whole lens that I look through in the relational approach. But she's on her own personal journey with her parents, and that she's going to share a little bit more about. In fact, there's this really powerful story that she shares that is going to give you a great new perspective on how you can be messaging the authenticity of care and compassion that you offer in your home for people that you are looking to bring in as care providers in your home, as employees, as well as your residents and your families. And another interesting story that she shares is around her roadblocks and barriers to moving her mom into long-term care, and her generosity and the kind of feedback that she's able to provide in that experience that we can all learn from. So you'll be able to take away some ideas on your social media, marketing, branding, with your social media platforms and website, as well as really reconnecting with the authenticity and compassion through the lens of marketing. So I hope you enjoy this conversation as much as I did. Krista, welcome to the Relational Approach Podcast. I'm so excited to have you here in studio with me in Halifax, Nova Scotia.
I'm really excited. Thanks so much for inviting me in.
Of course. Well, why don't we just start with you sharing a little bit about who you are, what you do, and then we're going to get into all the juicy stuff when it comes to how you can support seniors care homes with their branding, messaging, and overall image in the community.
Yeah, so I have been in digital marketing now this is my 15th year in business. Well, in a couple of weeks, it will actually be my 15th year in business. And I have served mostly women over 40 in my career. That is who I have been working with. Of course, I've worked with you. My gosh, how long has it been now? Probably 3 years.
3 or 4 years.
Yeah, 3 or 4 years.
Yes, I am over 40.
Yes. And I started thinking I wanted to be a coach. Very quickly transitioned into digital marketing, meaning websites, branding, social media. Because, when we talk about a website, all the roads that lead to a website actually are the social media pieces. And even though, that's really sexy and everybody thinks that's the thing I need to solve, actually the conversions happen on the website. So having an understanding of both, I think, is really crucial. And in 2020, I actually got certified as a StoryBrand certified marketing guide. And that has completely changed the game for me in terms of the kind of support that I can offer clients and how to help them create a narrative that tells the story of their business, of their brand, of their organization in a way that's compelling and that they can actually have a measurable ROI.
Got it. Well, when I reached out to you, I was still living in Ontario at the time. And I think in our initial conversation, you shared that you were on the journey of being a family member with your parents and really got the work that I was doing. And you also got my audience. And that was a super helpful way to be able to help me build my website, my social media presence, and those kinds of things. And I think it would be interesting, when I look at seniors care homes, whether it's long-term care, assisted living, memory care, there's just, I think, lots of opportunity to help provide some guidance and support for homes in how they're messaging. And maybe the first place to start would be if you were working with a home that they came to you and said, we want you to help us with all the magic stuff that you do. What would be the starting questions that you would ask them to get to know where they are at and what they need?
Yeah, that's a great question. And I think it's a really great starting point. I think the most important thing is to identify your niche audience. What people need to realize is that there are billions of social media users all the time on every platform. And in order to stand out from those billions of users and find the people that they most want to serve, they really need to identify not only their kind of local market, because let's be honest, most of these organizations are going to have a geographical area that they're going to serve. So that does help narrow down the niche. But even within that, there are so many little micro niches. So, for example, I think it would be really helpful for you to identify, okay, what season are we in? Are we in a season of staff recruitment? Because the messaging that would go out during that time to attract staff members is totally different than, let's say, perhaps you're targeting families. And then even within those or residents themselves, you could be going right to the resident as well. Let's not forget them. So I feel like there's kind of like 3 niche markets that they need to always be thinking about. But then within the families and the residents, you can even hone down even more, because I feel like you need to think about the people, maybe the people who are, I'm going to say probably in their late 30s all the way up to their late 50s, who may have parents, but their parents are actually doing really well. So it's not even on their radar that they may need some kind of an organization, some kind of a seniors care facility for their loved one at any point, because they're so active and they're so good. So those are the people that are really problem unaware. They don't even know that there could be a potential problem that's going to come up. And then we have people who, then they start to kind of realize that, like, that second niche market level up would be the people who are now problem aware. There's some memory things. I'm spending a lot of time talking to my loved one, helping them figure out the TV or the whatever the conversations are that happen on the phone. And they're realizing that, they're not quite as good as they're thinking about things differently. And they're probably also actively going, okay, I have this problem, not ready to solve it yet, but I have this problem. And that's a different message that you need to share to reach those people. Then we have the market that are people who are going, we're in doo-doo now, and I'm really starting to get overwhelmed. I need to start looking for a solution. So they're not aware of the solutions that exist around them. So those are my solution unaware people. And then it goes to the solution aware. All 4 have different needs and different narratives that you can tell within those micro niches in the niches. And I think that you can also look at like families and residents. They also need a little bit of a different spin on that message. And there's so many ways to do it. But that would be the place that I would start with, is figure out, what is our message? What is it? What are our goals? And how do we bring those together, knowing that we have these little targeted micro niches within the niche that we're trying to kind of target and make sure that they know that we're here.
I really like how you phrase that as far as what season they're in, because most seniors care organizations are looking to recruit great new staff to join their teams. A lot of times, certainly in retirement assisted living, it's very much a marketing approach. Long-term care, there's generally speaking tons and tons of wait lists that are happening in every province, but there still is a need to brand and market the message, particularly since a lot of people have misconceptions about long-term care and that sense of, I never want to have to put my loved one into an institution is sort of their mindset. Yeah. Now, you've got a very powerful personal lens, and even just over the last few days, be interested for you to share that, as well as in looking through the lens of what you've experienced and knowing what you know about marketing and branding, kind of what's worked that you've seen in your personal experience and what hasn't worked.
Yeah, that's a great question. So currently where I'm at, to be in full transparency, my dad is on comfort care in the hospital. So he's definitely down to his last days. Mom and dad both moved into private retirement in 2019, I think, if I go back, the fall of 2019. Things have been happy, great. They moved in because my mom had dementia, and it had progressed to the point that it wasn't really good for her to be in the house anymore. I was the exhausted caregiver driving about an hour. They live about an hour and 10 minutes away from where I am in the city, and driving to them sometimes 3 times a week, because it would be midweek just to check on them. It would be the weekend, and like they needed groceries. And then inevitably one parent or another is going to have some kind of an appointment that you have to take them to. So I was quite honestly just exhausted from that and was so delighted when they moved in, and they're so well cared for, and it's an amazing experience. And, now we're at the place where mom's dementia has progressed. She needs that next level of care. So she actually just got a placement. We found out last Friday. This stuff is still going on with my dad. So navigating that, it's been really fascinating. But one beautiful thing that happened yesterday, I think this is a really powerful story. I went up to visit my mom, to take her to visit my dad. We had, on the advice of their physician, it wasn't a good idea, we didn't feel, to take mom in to see dad. She's been actively seeking, and to take her out is a big deal because then she tries to get out even more. And she has gotten out in the middle of the night with her teddy bear in the parking lot with her nightgown. And that's scary. And that's through, locked doors, right? So we knew that by taking her to the hospital, and plus would she really understand what was going on? Like, that was kind of the other thing. But we also feel like, okay, we're coming down to it. We don't want them to we didn't want dad to not see mom and understand that she was good, because that has always been a concern of his, to make sure she's okay. So anyway, I went up yesterday and I took my Dyson Airwrap and I did her hair, and I brought my makeup and I did her makeup, and I let her choose. Like, I said, Mom, let's choose something like nice and bright. She chose this beautiful shirt that she wanted to wear, and I dolled her all out. We went out and I created a reel about it. Yeah. I meet so many people who are dealing with the same level of dementia, and they address it, and the way that they deal with it is so I mean, from my perspective, it feels very victim centered. It's like, why me? Well, this is horrible. Why is my loved one being taken away from me? Instead of just rolling with it and saying, you know what, this is what we have. And why don't we find the wonder and the joy in this? And when you do that, when you lean into their story, whatever world they're creating, it's wonder and it's joy. So I created this reel yesterday, taking her to see my dad. And the reel, it was an Instagram reel. The reel, or the video, was really about my dad and her saying goodbye. Because when we got there, I said, do you know who's in the bed? And she really didn't. She knew he was my father, but I was the neighbor. So it really wasn't, still wasn't making a connection. And I kind of put her chair up close, and I said, you can hold his hand if you want to. And she stood up and she leaned over him. He's, asleep, not even really awake. And she put her lips on his lips, and then took her hand and brought it to her own lips. Like, her body knew, even though her mind didn't. Anyway, I say all this because obviously I debated to share this on social media. Do you not share this on social media? It felt like an important story to tell. And I feel like I have a personal point of view that I think could help a lot of other people, friends, family, understand and be able to process what's going through if they understand the way that I'm looking at it through this lens of, let's just go into her world and meet her where she's at. Anyway, this morning, the marketing director of the organization of the home where my mom lives reached out and said, hey, we really want to bring this into our leadership team today. And I thought to myself, gosh, what an opportunity. I'm not the only content creator, I'm sure, in all of these homes. Anybody that is listening, you have individuals who are documenting their lives, and you could absolutely develop relationships and collaborations. It's almost like an influencer's marketing that you could do at your level, because I know a lot of the concern sometimes is, well, like, how do we share video and photos of our residents if we don't really have permission to do that? You can get around that and let other people tell the story through their eyes. And then it's user-generated content. You just get to sit back and just relax and let it roll out. That would be something I think that would be so smart, to have those conversations. Identify the people who, if you're seeing people taking video, taking pictures, asking them, hey, what do you do with that? I would love to maybe, talk to you about, if you're going to share that, will you tag us? Will you allow us to share that on our page? Because that's the story that you want out there, because that's the beauty, right?
Well, I mean, what a perfect example to talk about that relational approach and connection, and I had the opportunity to see that reel that you posted and all of the comments, and it was a tearjerker.
Yeah.
And I loved how what you brought out was the beauty and the joy, where a lot of people would see the sadness and the fear. And even your comment about there's your mom counting the windows for you.
Yep.
And being able to, from a family perspective, be able to really lean into that in what's right now for you, even as we're recording today, a very intense and emotional time.
Yeah.
And that's a perfect takeaway for any home to consider how they can connect when they've got the relational connection with their families. Yeah. The trust is there, and being able to look at the experience through their eyes and sharing that.
Yeah. And it takes away, I think, a lot of, for those two, kind of micro niches that we talked about, the, problem unaware and solution unaware, for those people, or even the problem aware people, but aren't really know that they need to find a solution yet, they need to see those stories because it's coming for them. And if that can be sprinkled into their feed, and they're reaching them because they're reaching them through their own peer network, which is the magic in all of that, right? Like you're not having to spend thousands and thousands of dollars to target specific areas and reach people of a certain demographic or psychographic. You absolutely are targeting the people who are also going to have parents in that same or loved ones in that same level of care and may need it. And if they're seeing that, they're going, oh, because I can't tell you how many direct messages I had last night asking me, where are your parents at? What home are they in? I want to know. Like, it worked magically. So I give kudos to the marketing department at the home where they're at to have seen that, recognized it, reached out to me and asked me, how can we kind of collaborate together in the future and get this story shared more widely, because your perspective is so valuable.
Yeah. So if we go back to the initial framing around the seasons, because what I'm hearing there is that it is an intentional, well-designed approach when homes are thinking about whether it be their website, their social media, and that's likely with LinkedIn, Facebook, and Instagram. Yeah. And I tend to think of those audiences being different, right? Like, so for me, LinkedIn is very much that professional relationship. I would think for homes, that would be the great place to be connecting with your community of leaders that are also on LinkedIn, because they could be potential families, residents, from a recruiting standpoint, where Instagram and Facebook tend to be more on that community-based family resident type of thing.
Yeah. I also think YouTube. I don't think you should discount YouTube. There are a number of homes who use YouTube really well as well.
Okay. And so what would be some things that stand out for you when you see YouTube videos?
Okay, the things that stand out, the biggest thing is the reliance on stock footage and stock video. I see it and I just go, no, you can do better. You can absolutely do better. I would not hesitate to sign away and let you take video. And I understand how important it is. And I feel like probably what's happening is that as the residents, as the age keeps creeping up, like we've got boomers and, even the silent generation who are still, and maybe, to an extent, maybe some older Gen X who are entering, kind of that stage of life where they're requiring that kind of care. And I think that as that grows up, like we had social media when we were in our 20s and even in our teens. So I guess what I'm saying is, when that wave comes, lean into that and stop using stock, because it is so evident. Everybody's using the same pictures. Everybody's using the same video. You can't stand out when you're in a sea of sameness.
Well, and what comes to mind for me with that, Krista, is here's an opportunity for a home to partner with their family council, for example. So let's have the conversation and say, we want to be intentional with a well-designed approach in how we are sharing the great work that we're doing in our home. And just the example that you shared earlier, to say, let's get our families and residents on board and actually give them an opportunity to say, what would you create?
Yeah.
Think back to before you moved into our home. What would you have wanted to see? Or what were some of the things that maybe you did see or that you did want to see, and start creating that?
Yeah. And I think also, like, even just to piggyback on that for an idea, knowing that you could actually ask your residents, okay, what do you like about living here now? What didn't you know before? What surprised you? You could do a whole series, and you could have a group of like 3 or 4. They're down. They're all down. They're all around the TV. You could easily go down. I'm sure if you're listening, you know exactly what I'm talking about. And some of them are falling asleep, and some of them are talking to each other. You could have a very fun conversation and just record that. Heck, it could be as simple as even that's just B-roll where you're seeing the people laugh. You don't even have to have their voices. You don't even really have to show them. You could show the backs of them. So there's ways also to, I think, encourage and display the beauty and the wonder and the joy that exists inside, parallel to the sadness that I think a lot of people feel when they think about what it looks like to be in seniors care or long-term care.
Well, certainly having the opportunity to influence, because anyone that works in seniors care, they get to see those funny moments, those happy moments, those things that bring them back to work every day. And yet I think sometimes we assume that, well, families see that too. The community sees that too.
Yeah. They don't. We need to point it out.
It was just a few days ago that you had sent me a text to say, oh my gosh, Deb, I'm so glad you do the work you do, because this whole transitioning into long-term care has been... we won't say word for word what your text was, but I'm curious if you'd be able to share that. And also through the lens of what would have really worked. And particularly when you think about that relational approach, it sounded very transactional and a bit disjointed.
Yeah, I was quite honestly shocked. And I think because I know of your work and I know your influence, and it just surprised me that in this day and age, this is still the scenario. And thank goodness I am understanding and know kind of a little bit of the background. So it made it easier for me to go in. But scenario, we found out on Friday that my mother had a long-term placement in a dementia care unit, which was like key for us. We knew she needed locked. There's only a number of dementia care units in the province. So the fact that she actually got in one and not in a regular locked facility was huge for us. And we were told to expect a call later that afternoon. Call never came. But the call came first thing on Monday, and they wanted her Tuesday. And I was like, and the call there was no, here's what you need to bring. It was just show up and sign the papers and leave her. And I'm kind of going, just hold on a second. What does she need for clothes? Can we bring a chair for her room? Does she need a television in her room? Is there a phone she's going to be? Just basic logistic questions. None of that there was no heads up. I was the one who was on Monday, like going, okay, wait, I'm really glad that you're so welcoming and you want this to happen so efficiently. A, here's what's going on with her husband. And B, I need some information. Do I need to label my mother's clothes before they come? Just simple things. Like I wouldn't have had time to Amazon those labels if I had even needed to do that. So I think there's a real opportunity in the first time you're reaching out to someone to say, I am so glad that your mother is going to become a member of our community. Just that alone, just saying that one thing when they call would have made all the difference in the world. Not just, hi, this is, when can you come in? We need to have her. Let's get this underway. It absolutely could have been handled in a different way, and was after I went in and said, actually, I work with someone who works, in your industry, and a lot of the work that we've been doing in marketing is helping people develop a more relational approach. Is it possible that I can offer you feedback after we're done this whole process? Are you open to receiving that? And she, oh my gosh, yes, very much so. I said, okay, wonderful. I will make sure that I collect it all and give it to you. And I even this morning, when the marketing person had reached out to me from their private community, I also offered the same feedback. I said, and in turn, I would love to offer you some feedback that I've noticed about my time and in your organization and in your home.
And could you imagine, Krista, if you knew nothing? Like most people.
Well, this is what I'm saying. Like, I can understand why they have so many prickly jalapeno people who show up, because they're showing up with the story that, oh my God, I can't believe I have to do this. Like, I'm at this place where I'm committing my parents to, and this is not what they want. Like, all of the story that they have in their head. I can't even imagine they're in their own feelings. They're not even really thinking about again, it's more that, oh my gosh, this is happening to me, instead of this is happening for me. And I feel like the homes could take a way better approach if they allowed space for those conversations to just happen before you dive into the logistics. So tell me about your mom. Tell me about your dad. What do I need to know about her that's fun? Not one question was asked about personality, foods that she loves. It was just all so transactional, and I can understand why people have that. And then, of course, me at the end, I'm like, okay, so and here's the other things that you need to know about my mom. And then I went into them. I don't think people know enough to do that and advocate on their own, because I think they're in almost shell shock, like, this is happening and this is happening really fast. And it has to happen fast, because let's be honest, you have like 48 to 72 hours to turn that bed around. I also understand the financial aspect of it and why they do what they do, but it could be a little bit more personalized. And I think that's the relational approach. Mm-hmm. That's really what it boils down to.
Well, even having the call on Friday, being told that they would call you and they didn't, that's the first broken promise.
Yeah.
So already the trust is not there. And then
we were left wondering all weekend, are we supposed to show up on Monday? Like, do we just no, there was nothing, not even. And then Monday comes and it's like, okay, you need to get in today to sign all the papers and we expect her tomorrow. And I was trying to move hell on earth to make that happen. And then I was kind of like, just wait, my dad's dying. What am I doing? No, you know what? These are extenuating circumstances. You're going to wait a week. We'll be there next Wednesday. Like, let's just take a breath.
Mm-hmm. Well, and that whole approach of calling, you need to be moving in, is about fitting into their schedule. And we get it. Like, we understand that, and you have got a great appreciation from working with me on that's part of, they've got pressures from the funding organization. Yeah. But then the impact to really step back. And that's why I think it's so powerful hearing these types of stories directly from families and residents who are going through it.
Yes.
And to be working with an organization that is willing to hear the feedback and reflect and implement a different approach. Because the biggest pushback on that is, well, we don't have time. Yeah. And I was thinking, you can't afford not to do that, because the amount of time it's going to take to unravel when problems start to escalate.
5 minutes at the beginning compared to 2 hours at the end, or when you're ready to just throw your hands up in the air, and maybe staff are really frustrated and you might even be losing staff. There could be staff who are not showing up because these families had this negative experience coming in, and they take that. People remember, they take that first cue from how they were made to feel. And, I also think, how would you like your resident to feel? Because in essence, even though you're dealing with the family, you're dealing with the resident, and you're making an impact. And I'm telling you, I've met the amount of compassionate, caring people aren't in long-term care or seniors care. They're there because they genuinely love that helping and that giving and that sense of being able to be so compassionate and relational at the end, near the end of someone's life. And they would never want anyone to feel like they weren't doing that. I'm just saying, take some of that energy and direct it towards the person that you are having the first relationship with, because that family can make or break the experience and make it even better for your home and better for your residents.
Well, setting everybody up for success and being able to, I think that providing that level of assurance, and as we talk about, take the lead and be the guide your family needs and wants, because they're coming in, they don't know what they don't know. Yeah. And again, you know more than the average person. Yes. And you were still blindsided. And I think almost the shock of how that feels to be have such a cold reception,
Yeah.
if we can even call it a reception, right?
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I think I also had to be aware and, try to be reflective and say, okay, also my dad is dying. So am I being a little bit more overly sensitive to what's going? I really wasn't. Like, it was just very, and in saying that, part of the conversation with my sister, part of the conversation was with me. Did she get more empathy? She certainly didn't lead me to believe that she had, a more relational approach or more empathy or compassion exchange to that conversation. It was very, here's what you need to do. These are the things you need to bring in, void check. Like, it was just like very transactional. And there was such an opportunity to create a different experience. And I turned that around. But again, it shouldn't be on me to turn that around, because every single person coming in with a family to admit them are not going to have the same perspective that I have. A lot of them, because trust me, many of my friends that are going through this have said to me, I don't know how you have such an optimistic view on all of this. Like, it must be incredibly difficult that your mother doesn't know your name anymore. And I'm like, well, it is, but I'm living in her world. If I fight it and I try to keep saying, no, mom, like, I'm your daughter, and there's no point in doing that. If you just run with it, then you have, it's joy and it's fun. And you actually get to know a different person that shows up than the one who raised you. And there's a gift in that. There's a perspective that you can find in that. So, and I do feel passionate about sharing that, because I think there's too many people that I hear about who are just overwhelmed with, I can't believe that, this disease is stealing from me and taking all these moments. And it doesn't have to be that way. And I think in every home, you're going to have people like me who do see it from that perspective. And you want to make sure that you lean into them and let them share their story. Bring them, give them the ability to be able to talk to your people, and whether that's a talk, whether that's interviewing them on a podcast, or if you have a YouTube channel, short little videos that you could create in the same kind of style, just someone asking questions of that person, or giving them 100% control to let them tell it in their own way, kind of like I did with the Instagram reel that I created.
Mm-hmm. Well, when you think about certainly in long-term care, the average home, is probably 70 to 80% of their residents have those types of limitations that impact and that can create those, whether you want to call them responsive behaviors, and a lot of that angst and stress that the families feel. There's a huge opportunity for, just as you're describing, and it doesn't even have to be formal education.
No.
But it's more just, to me, that almost sounds like a bit of a peer support.
Yes. Yeah, I would absolutely agree. And just being able to share your truth and let people move through, this could be possible for me and my loved one too. I never really thought about it like that. I know the power of sharing a story, and I think we all do. We've all heard a story. You may have been moved by something that I shared today, especially if you work in this industry, you probably very much were. I think that when we empower our people to just share their stories, something good's always going to come out of that. That's a relational approach. But if you stick with the transaction and you don't allow people to feel, you've really lost an important opportunity.
I think that's a great place to end this conversation, because my question was going to be, what does a relational approach mean to you? And you've nailed it. So thank you, Krista, for coming into the studio today. And what a great conversation. And just sending you a big hug for your family and what's next for you.
Thank you so much. Yeah. It was a pleasure. I enjoyed it.
Thanks. Thank you for joining us on the Relational Approach Podcast. If you're enjoying this topic, I invite you to check out my website, deborahbakti.com. And when you click on the resources tab, you will be able to access a whole bunch of free resources that I would love for you to enjoy. You can also check out these episodes on my YouTube channel. And if you haven't already, make sure that you subscribe on your favorite podcast platform.